Hi, this is the Desteni Movie Hangout and talking about the movie Divergent. And we have two guests from United States, Kelly
Hi.
and Valentin from Slovenia.
Hello.
And this is a live session and you can ask questions. There is a Q&A part and you just ask about the movie or process or about us, whatever you want, and we will see it and can answer it. And tonight's session is about Divergent. It's a movie. I try to plot it. There is a strict faction system in an alternate future where each youngster has to make a test, and that test can suggest that which faction one would head on, and then make a choice for life. And then within that faction, there is some competition going on, and then many more interesting points will happen in the movie. I'm sure who is interested can watch it. And I think there will be spoilers, so if you want first, then watch a movie, and then I can just ask a question. For instance, Valentin, how did you like the movie, or what was your first impression?
Yeah, I liked it very much. It was interesting about how they profiled each person, what detailed tests they had to go through in order to get their suggestion about their best life role.
Cool. And Kelly, first impressions? Hi.
Hi. Yeah, it was a very entertaining movie, and yeah, the basic premise of it being that whole point of you take the test and find out who you are and what your whole purpose is going to be in life, and to me that related a lot to my own personal high school experience, which is a time where you're deciding, you're making that decision, if you can, of what you're going to do, like for the rest of your life, and you're being exposed to different subjects and kind of trying to figure out, who am I, what do I like to do, what can I see myself doing for the rest of my life. And so the movie really kind of resonated with me on that point of my experience of, what am I going to do with the rest of my life, and making that choice. And it can be a very difficult choice, and you don't necessarily know if you're going to fit into one thing or another.
Yes, fascinating. And we just got our first question. It's Marzana. She's asking that we can give some quick synapse about the plot, basically. So,
Well, yeah,
yes, go on.
like you're saying, it's you have these factions in society that each kind of represent a different function in society. You have the Dauntless, which is sort of like the military aspect, which is the kind of very physical and kind of um, the ones who will be kind of like the policing or the security force. And then you have the erudite, which is like the ones who work with the law and are very intelligent. And then there's the uh, abnegation, which is kind of like a charitable group and takes care of the sick or those who need help, um, and also is at the time the ones who run the government. And then you also have, what's the other one's, Valentine? Do you remember?
No.
There was Amity. I think
Oh,
they
yeah.
produce the food.
Yeah. And I think there was one more. That's it.
I
Well,
remember they had the law, sort of, not the law,
Mhm.
but like
Yeah,
justice.
that's the
And
erudite one, the blue ones,
um,
or was it another?
there was another, I think.
Yeah. Well, they can Google it.
Yes, and the plot basically starts when the girl takes the test, and
Yeah.
then it's not clear that she's not belonging to any group, and then she has to just go on with her own decision what she wants to be. And
Yeah.
then after that it goes on that they are actually sort of afraid from this kind of divergent persons because they are like less programmable, or so to speak, and these things will cause some trouble, and we can just watch how she tries to fit in. And actually, after deciding a faction, there is a sort of competition. They go through each I guess each faction has this sort of competition. Cool. And then basically, what happens is that there are these factionless people who couldn't fit into any faction or just fell out from the first competition of becoming official member of the faction. So then she has to fight through her own survival, basically. And can you give us, for instance, Kelly, about the factions? What was your impression about it?
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of um, like our actual society and how it works in terms of, you have all these different positions that you can get into um, in society, and if you're able to pick one, like if you're able to in high school kind of figure out something you might want to do and go for it, then you have a good chance to wind up in a good position and be taken care of and have stable financial. Um, but if you don't know what you want to do and you don't have a goal to focus on and you don't go to college and pick a career, then you're going to more end up like one of the factionless where you are going to be working probably a minimum wage job or have trouble finding work and end up on welfare or maybe homeless. So it reminds me a lot of our society, how it is. It's just a more kind of extreme and colorful example of how um, it's kind of like that, where it's like if you can pick a path and stick to it, you might be okay. But if you have trouble making that decision, which it's not easy to necessarily pick one thing that you're going to want to do for the rest of your life, because as human beings we're pretty dynamic. How can we funnel ourselves into one thing? So um, yeah, that's what I saw within the system of the factions in the movie.
Cool, yes, I agree. And Valentin, can you add something?
Yeah, I agree that it is very similar to our current society and even more similar to the society that existed or is existed already or still in India. This is the caste system where the people were strongly segregated into different levels of society based on what is their mission, what is their karma in this world. And our society still works like that. You have to pick your like occupation. You are very young age when you finish primary school, then you have to decide what will be your job. And of course, we are not yet in the state of knowing what we want to do, or what are all the options, or what are how the certain job will look like when we do it, if we will like it or not. So there are certain tests like IQ tests and physical tests, and then these school counselors suggest you what will be the best occupation for you based on your these talents. But these talents that we have is mostly programs that we picked up from our parents. So our family surrounding influences us in how we are going to develop these potentials. And of course, low-income parents cannot afford so many supportive activities for their children in order to develop all these wide sort of abilities. And so certain people struggle with finding their identity to pick their life path. But then also our society is changing, because in the past, where there was a need for the very specifically educated people to work in the factories, this was a cool choice. You worked for the full life on the same working position. You were a professional in some field, but now where our society is changing and robots and machines are producing things, we do not need, or we must not be so narrow-minded anymore to be just a professional in one narrow field, but to have wider awareness and to understand how everything is interconnected, and thus to be a responsible human being.
Yeah, that's a cool point to wrap it up. It's like we just cannot focus on one thing within our living, but we should just develop a wider perspective. And I think it's a cool point within the movie, because then she's not only focusing on one aspect of herself, but wants to express multiple talents or expressions or way of living, and it's cool. And Marzana is asking that, what do you think, guys? This is a reflection of our life here now, and what do you think about the solutions for us now? Yes, Valentin's sort of try to explain that. It's similar to on our system now. And I'd like to bring back to the story a bit. And for instance, there was this point when she was just like feeling really lonely. And even when she already had the choice, because of her decision and the test result, she's basically had to shut her mouth. Like she couldn't speak about this point, and she's really alone. And have you, or had you, some similar points within our life, like in school, or if you had, and what was your decision and basically the solution? That how could you stop such feeling like out of the system, or sorry, you understand now. Kelly, can you go on?
Yeah, well, for me, this movie related a lot to the high school experience of like having to pick a certain group or path that you're gonna walk, especially because in the schools that I went to, in the public schools here in the States, we had like pretty defined like factions, if you will, in the schools, or cliques or cliques as they're called, where you had groups that were very specifically split up into certain kind of lifestyles, where one group listens to a certain kind of music and dresses a certain kind of way and acts a certain kind of way, talks a certain kind of way, and you had a variety of groups like this, like the jock groups and the nerd groups, and people who listen to rap and people who listen to metal music, and it was all very like specifically defined. And when you're in this high school experience and you're young and you're kind of new to this world, you don't even know who you really are, and you're faced with this kind of system in front of you. You just kind of go along with it, and so you kind of just try and decide, which one do I fit into? Is it this one? Is it that one? Well, there's something I don't really like about that one, so maybe it's this one. And so you pick one and you go into it, but then you find that, it's very limiting, because it's like, why can I only listen to this one kind of music, or act this one certain way, or wear these certain types of clothes? And over time, it just got to be kind of ridiculous to me, like, because I know that I like other things, I'm not so limited that I only just like this one kind of music or this or that, and because when I looked at it, when I would be judging another style or another way, it wasn't because I really didn't like it, it's just because I wasn't supposed to like it, because that's not my group, and that just didn't make any sense. So eventually I just decided I didn't want to be so limited anymore, and I wanted to be open and free to explore any kind of expression, be it clothes or music or whatever. Those are kind of the things that are really pertinent to a teenager's life at the time.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
so for me, it was really related to my high school experience, like, perfectly, because that's kind of what I went through, in not really wanting to have to fit into one thing, and eventually deciding I've had enough. I want to like other things, and to hell with the consequences. What's gonna happen? There's nobody out there actually telling me that I can't like this or that, or so yeah.
Yeah, it's like the whole system is set up like it's always pushing like we should choose and we should be like this or like that, or strictly going into one box and then you just never come back. And I actually know some guys, like at the university, if you were programmer or mathematician, you wear like this heavy metal clothes and then long hair, and many guys are still like that. Even after
Yeah.
10 years, they remain, so it's so funny to see it. And Valentin had similar experiences?
Yeah, so initially my life was also very limited. I allowed my parents to direct my professional path, and then I worked in our family business. And also when I established my own business, I continued the path that I thought was best for me to express myself in a certain field. But then the conflicts in the relationships started to push me into the research of psychology and spirituality and so on, and this has started to expand my awareness. And after a while, I felt very limited doing my job as a photographer, just being an observer, and I wanted to do something else. But of course, when I wanted to speak with other people, I could not speak about everything that I find out. So I had to learn that if I speak to others about everything, they will react, and I will not achieve the result that I want. So this information, the new development, the expanded awareness needs to be distributed into society in very small amounts, very slowly, in order for other peoples to become used to this new information. And of course, you have to then find a group which is also on the same level of awareness that you are, or that supports expanding awareness without any limits. So it was very cool to find this Desteni group where we research this all aspects of life without any judgment, without reactions. We work on that, stopping our reactions, and to research and to cross-reference all the information and spread useful information amongst each other. So yeah, I suggest everyone that feels like trapped in this society and that they cannot speak to anyone, to join our Desteni group, because we speak about everything without any limitations.
Yeah, it's cool to mention that, yes, we have Desteni I Process Lite online course, which is like anyone just registers and goes through its free course, and then one can just discover the basic tools of self-introspection and self-forgiveness and self-realization, and how to stand up from this fear and the limitation and the boxing, and actually not just being this free and divergent, but become a responsible man. And as I bring up the point of fear, it was a cool point within the movie that each one had to face their own fear within the simulation program. And it is cool because within that we can see what we are accepting and allowing within our mind, and how actually it's limiting our own behavior, and how we can just let things happen. Especially, for instance, there was in this movie like this factionless, and they all just accepted it, that there is a competition and you become factionless, then that's it, and no one really cared about them. Like it's the system, there is this competition, we do it, and then that's all. And it's interesting. And can you say something about this, Kelly?
Yeah, that's a great point, because fear is a lot of what keeps us in limited roles and patterns in our life, because and that's something that I had to face too. Like in that example with going through high school and deciding I don't want to be so limited. I mean, I was afraid, like, well, what are people going to think? Because I've always been this way, or, you know, this is how the role that I fit in. What happens if I break out of that? You know, and I had to face that in my relationships and my friends. You know, like, hey, you know what? I'm going to listen to this kind of music and I don't care what you think, kind of thing. But, and if I had given into the fear, I would have just stayed doing the same thing. If I was afraid to lose my friends, or, you know, those were all the things that kind of came up with me, like, how is this going to change my life? Who will I be? What's going to happen to me? How will people treat me? You know, it was a lot of fears that came up just to prevent me from changing and breaking through the definitions that I had of myself. And so that's what is a really underlying point that stops us from breaking through limitations and seeing what we're really capable of and who am I really, when I actually just really explore what's here and see what do I really like, you know, or have I just been living a certain role of what I think is expected of me. And So that was cool that they brought that into the movie within facing their fears, because that's also a large part of what we do within the Desteni I process, is face our fears, because that's really the key to stopping limitation, because that's the main thing that stops us from changing, from expanding ourselves, you know, especially in our system where it is like a life and death game. I mean, if you don't get a proper job, you're going to end up as the factionless. You're going to be homeless or destitute or what have you. I mean, it's real. It's a real deal. And we've kept ourselves in fear of, you know, changing anything, because it's like, I don't want to rock the boat. I don't want to end up poor. You know, I just want to stick to my job, stick to my role, have my financial security, and be fine. So, I mean, it's like that fear is so ingrained in us, and keeps us from changing anything, you know, changing ourselves, changing our reality. So it's really an important point to face those fears. And what I thought was really cool in the movie was how, you know, she was really good at facing her fears. You know, she got through it faster and better than anyone else. And how she did that was by basically realizing it's not real. And now the movie makes it seem like really simple, like, oh, I just have to tell myself, oh, fear's not real. And from a certain perspective, it is kind of that simple. I mean, it starts with that realization. But what we know and what we walk within the Desteni I process is actually a real practical process of getting through your fears, because it's not quite as simple as just, oh, I'm just not, you know, I don't believe that, I'm not going to be afraid. Because, you know, you have to then, once you get through the fear, you have to decide, well, who am I going to be in this situation? What am I going to do instead of being afraid? And so that's one thing that has really benefited me within walking with the Desteni I process, is that it really helps you to work through the fears and limitations that you have through a practical process, you know, and not just like a magic wand, like, oh, I'm not going to be afraid anymore. You know, it's not so easy as would be portrayed in the movies.
Yes, definitely. And also, I must admit that myself, I was like also persuaded myself with that I was not fearful at all. I do not fear at all. And then I switched it in my mind with recklessness. That anytime I was like, okay, do I fear? Yes, okay, I face it. I jump down from heights and then do really irresponsible things. And then if I survive, I just proved myself that I am not fearful. So, and still I was like completely limited within my mind until I started to word these things down, and then slowing down by writing, and actually one by one understanding the reasons and the starting point, and that really assisted and supported me. Valentin?
Yeah, I would also like to read the question from Rebecca Dalmas. She wrote, would you say that her ability to transform in her mind was really a developed critical and creative thinking skill? I would say yes. When we get to this stage that we do not believe everything that we hear or everything that our mind produces, this is actually also called critical thinking. And in this online course, Desteni I Process, we learn how the mind works, how it is very skilled in producing thoughts that distract us from what is really here and create an illusion of reality. And we then have the power to decide if we want to believe in this illusion, this imagination of the mind, or to recognize it as unreal and return our awareness back on our physical bodies and the universal physical reality that is here and that we all share equally. So yeah, we have very supportive practical skills. Nowhere in any movie is actually shown what are practical tools to release from those fears and illusions. And here we get to know really the structure of the mind, the mechanics of producing thoughts and energetic reactions like feelings and emotions, and how we can stop it so that we are not distracted anymore from what is important, which is a common reality that we all share.
Yes, cool point. And also, I really like the point when she had to solve these fear tests, but she still had to like blend in, like dauntless. Like they had to think that she's thinking like a warrior because she couldn't just stop the all delusions and like nothing is real because that is not really practical. So she had to go into the system basically in the system as the system and make a difference. I like that analogy because in a way we also have to like have a practical plan, not just like becoming this I am free from everything, but still we are on the same planet and still we are responsible and still we are capable of affecting others. So it's cool to like apply these solutions, so to speak. But what a divergent can become, so to speak. And also Kelly had a cool note before the hangout that it was like you can be a divergent or not. And then what if you are not? It's like also not your choice. And I liked your explanation about that. Can you go on similar?
Oh, which one was that?
Like you mentioned that you are divergent or you are the one of the factions and how it's related to anybody basically.
Oh yeah, like how kind of like the movies would like to portray that there's just like one hero, or you know, like in this movie, um, like the mind control didn't work on the divergence, as if they're just somehow like special and different from everyone else, and um, so like movies like to make it seem like there has to be something different or special about you to be like the one, or but really, what we know is that anybody has that potential to not be so limited and to expand themselves. And I mean, that's why we work with the tools with the Desteni I process, because it's tools that anyone can use to, sort themselves out and stop their fears and limitations. So, to bring the movie down to earth, really everyone can be a divergent, so to speak. Anyone can start their process of questioning, the way things are, and questioning how the roles that society would put you in, and find out who you really are. It's not something that is just for somebody who's just special and just is that way somehow. Um, yeah, it's open to all of us.
Yes, it's cool. Really, I agree totally. And how about the thing that they are continuing the series? I just realized recently that it's a series by books actually, and I'm looking forward to see the next.
Yeah, I haven't actually read any of the books, so um, I think that's good for discussing the movie, because then we're just talking about the movie and don't have to get all into, oh, it's like this in the book, and like because there's often differences, but so yeah.
Yes, it's really that simple. And one point what came in my mind was like when they gave the simulation into each Dauntless soldier, and then the Divergent were like who couldn't be mind controlled. I really like that analogy. Like if within this society also there are many impressions like advertisements and fears and things like that, and then you can just turn it off. Like you cannot be mind controlled. And how can you reflect back to your own process? Valentin, can you go on?
Yeah, so being mind controlled is accepting everything that is being served to you by media, by educational institutions, to not have any reasoning or want to check if the information that is served to you is actually true. So we need to check if the information that is given to us is aligned with reality, or is it served only to protect the interest of some individual or some group, because there is a lot of manipulation and a lot of lies in this world, and everything is connected to the money system. Everyone seeks the profit. So how to manipulate others in order to extract as much money as possible. This is the main goal of basically every human in the unconscious level of the mind. So first step is to transform our own patterns in order for not be driven only by the money or emotions or feelings. These are the egoistic starting points, but to transform yourself into wanting to support everyone equally. Because if we continue this kind of separation, we will eventually destroy ourselves. Because we are in the closed system, we have limited resources, and we need to share them equally and protect them in order not to be used and destroyed totally. So our online course, Desteni I Process, supports us in developing such fresh, unegoistic mentality and personality, so that we can actually start living here without fearing each other's and not having any secret thoughts and agendas.
Yes, I agree. And we are going to the end of the hangout soon. So Kelly, can you give something out to add about the movie? Basically, in overall.
Well, I think that was a good point that Valentin was making, because it's something that we don't tend to consider is what's the consequence when we are just channeled into these specific roles and become that, and then we kind of forget about the world as a whole and how that's functioning, and we don't tend to consider, is there any harm that's taking place from just being caught up in these roles. And even it relates to, the societal roles that we play in terms of, who you're supposed to be as a mother or as a wife or as a father, or there's so many ways that you can take the factions from the movie, which are like specific roles, and compare it to actual life, and there's like so many roles that we try and fit ourselves into. It's not who we really are, and isn't really relevant to what's going on in reality and what we need to do here in terms of like taking care of our planet and making sure that everybody's taken care of. And so I think that's kind of an important point to look at, is the consequence that comes from channeling ourselves into these limited roles. I mean, that's the consequence on the greater scale. And then on our own personal scale, how does it affect our own lives to be kind of living an act or living an idea that we think that others want us to be all the time, or that we're supposed to be, and then how stifling and how limiting it is to just kind of be playing that part and be stuck in that role, and to, you know, consider what potential there is if we would move beyond that, you know, and that it's really worth it to break through that limitation and discover what's beyond.
Yes. And Valentin, something last words, if you want to add?
Well, I would like to thank everyone for watching this session and to research Desteni material, where we expose all kinds of programming that we were influenced by, also from the spiritual dimensions, and how we can break out of this jail, energetic jail of the mind, and live here practically.
Yes, definitely. And I have to say that this year was the first year of the Desteni Movie Night, and it was almost 40 sessions and great discussions about some cool selected movies. And we are planning to continue next year. And next week will be Interstellar. And thank you for being here, and see you next year. Bye. Thank you for being here, Kelly and Valentin. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.